You're a witness.
Good afternoon, Ms. Curtis.
Good afternoon.
You have your shield to deal with. I have my no, I'm fine. I'm just
Okay.
starting the comment, okay?
Yes,
I think that's a bit of a distraction. I can't wear my glasses and my mask without fogging up.
I know.
There's a lot of
It's-
hurdles here. So what I'm getting at is let's try to do the best we can to communicate, okay?
Sure. Yes.
Mr. O'Farrell, if you can lean the microphone down or turn it towards you too, get a little bit of volume on
Is
you.
that better, Judge?
Hold on one second. You okay? Okay, let's try now, Mr. O'Farrell.
Okay, does it work better now?
It's better. It's the quietest I've ever heard you in the long years I've been knowing you. Go ahead.
Thank you. And Ms. Curtis, if I don't make myself clear with any question, just tell me that, okay?
Okay.
So we can communicate as effectively as we can.
Yes.
Now, first of all, let me express my sympathy for your loss of your two sons.
Thank you.
And they were twins.
Yes.
And Cameron had been murdered in 2016, is that correct?
Yes.
And you mentioned that the person who was responsible for that is now in prison.
Correct.
Correct.
Yes.
And is it correct that Davion Thompson testified to help place that man in prison?
Yes. Correct.
Now, then your son Brandon is killed in November of 2017. Is that
Yep.
correct?
Correct. Yes.
And you have a daughter. She must be what, about 8 now?
She's 10.
10? I'm
Yes.
sorry.
Correct.
That's, the case is 3 years old. You had this Dodge that was actually driven for a while by Brandon when he was still alive.
Yes. Correct. I had given him that car. Yes.
And then he had another car that he had gotten shortly before his death. Is that correct?
Yes.
And so you kept the Dodge after his death.
I did. Yes.
And was that like a second car for you? It wasn't your only vehicle, was it?
It was an extra vehicle. Yes. I had my other car that I drove. It was an extra vehicle. Correct.
Now, you were living out at Camelot Apartments then, is that right?
Yes. Correct. Mhm.
And did they have any rules as far as having mobile cars there that you're not supposed to just park a car and leave it or abandon it?
I'm not sure.
Now, there came a time within the time frame we're talking about here where you loaned the car to Davion, is that right?
Yes. Correct.
And that was because he indicated he wanted to do a job interview and he wanted the transportation for that purpose.
Yes. Correct. Mhm.
And then you indicated that he didn't bring it back like the next day, and so you were in communication with him about the car and about what was going on,
Yes.
right?
Correct. Mhm.
And I believe you testified this morning that he indicated he was still looking for a job and you weren't real anxious to get the car back with that knowledge. Is that a fair statement?
Right. Yes. He was looking for a job. Correct.
Okay. So you go to work on Saturday and you're at work when the police contact you, is that right?
Yes. I was at King Communications. Yes.
Okay. And did they tell you that your car was suspected to have been involved in a shooting?
Yes.
Okay. Now, when you loaned your car, was it in your name or Brandon's name?
It's in my name.
When you loaned your car to Davion, was it properly plated and registered?
Yes.
So it had a plate on it?
Yes,
And when it was located after the police, did the police take you back to your apartment or did you drive separately?
we drove separately.
Okay. When you got back to your apartment after being advised of the situation by the police, could you see whether there was still a plate on the car?
There was not a plate on the car, I believe.
To this day, do you have any idea where the plate went from your car?
I have no idea, no.
There were also no keys with it, were there?
Correct, no keys, yes.
To this day, do you know where the keys went?
I know, I never did get the keys back, no.
Now, you had lent the car to Davion, is that right?
Yes, correct.
You were at work when it came back to, well, let me ask you this. Your car wasn't there when you went to work that morning, was it?
No, when I went to work, Davion had my car.
So you do not have any direct personal knowledge as to who brought your car back, do you?
Well, I assume Davion, I gave him the keys.
But you don't know who brought it back, do you?
No, not 100%, no.
You, excuse me, do we have exhibit 1? Judge, I'm just going to make a comparison to my copy so it will go quicker. I hope. May I approach the witness with exhibit 1, Your Honor?
You may.
Ms. Curtis, you were asked some questions this morning about your communications with the police to attempt to assist in helping to find out who had killed Brandon. Is that right?
Yes, correct.
And in particular, exhibit 1 is some communications that you had sent to the police. Is that correct?
Yes, correct.
If I understand correctly, this is shortly before the death of Mr. Parham that these were sent.
Yes, I don't remember an exact date, but yes.
Okay. The first page that I have in front of me has what appears to be, and I don't know what they're called, but it's a picture of someone with the words Will Brother, Bean Boy, Tone, and then in parentheses, R.I.P. Sean. Do you see that?
Yes,
Is that your first page of the exhibit?
yes, it is. Mhm.
That has a date on it of January 24th at 12:23 p.m. Do you see that?
Yes, correct. Mhm.
And then it's got above that a notation of Verizon at 10:05 a.m. Do you see that?
Yes. Mhm.
Do you know if that top reference to the 10:05 a.m., would that have been when you forwarded this on to the police?
I'm not sure if that's the time that I received the message or if that's the time that I forwarded it on. I'm sorry.
Okay. Where it says Wednesday, January 24th at 12:23 p.m., was that contained on the picture with the reference here to tone?
I'm sorry?
I guess I have to approach, Judge, if I can. Try not to. Where it says the date,
Mm-hmm.
that appears to be in the same
Oh, yes.
communication.
Yes.
Your Honor, I can't quite hear Mr. O'Farrell when he's up there.
Well, you can walk up here with him and be 6 feet from him while he's 6 feet from her. I don't know what else to tell you.
I don't know that the YouTube can pick it up without the mic.
Okay,
Thank you.
proceed.
Okay, so the same communication appears with the date and then the picture and the references to tone, is that right?
Yes, it appears to be, yes.
I'll go back. So is that the communication you sent to the police identifying Tone as the suspected shooter of your son Brandon?
Yes, I did send that to Detective Wortley, yes.
And that has the date associated with it of January 24th, which would have been 3 days before his death, right?
Yes, uh-huh.
Does that seem consistent with your memory as to when you sent it to the police?
It's been 3 years. I'm sorry, it's been so long. I can't remember exact
Okay.
times and dates. It's been a long time.
Now, the second page also has a date of a time of 10:06 under Verizon communication. Do you know, did you send all of these pages at once?
That I don't recall at this time if I did or not.
And this has under messages, or by the name messages, it's got Lisa, who would be you, I assume.
Yes, mm-hmm.
And it's apparently this is the communication from you to Wortley is up in the upper left hand there. That's the detective, right?
Yes, correct, uh-huh.
And you're referencing he has some family. You're talking about Tone here, is that right?
Yes, uh-huh.
You're trying to give information about where Tone could be located?
Yes, mm-hmm.
And he indicates to you that Wenzel, well, you get a communication that Wenzel and Wortley are tied up, but he'll pass it on. So the police are working with what you've given them. Is that your understanding?
Correct.
Then page 3 has the same Verizon LTE up there and the same 10:06. Do you think you sent this at the same time?
I don't recall if I sent this at the same time. I may not have.
10:06, we had the first reference 10:05, 10:06. Now 10:06, 10:06 on the next page, 10:06 on the page after that, and 10:06 on the last page. You don't think that's an indication that they were all sent at once, or can you tell?
I believe, yes, they were all sent at 10:06, it looks like, yes.
All right. Now going back to what is page 3 of the exhibit, you indicate this is Lisa, Brandon's mom. I was letting you know that this is who, quote, the streets are saying killed Brandon. You use quotation marks around the word streets, right?
Yes, mm-hmm.
You explain he goes by Tone. That's the next words, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that a yes?
Yes, sorry,
I'm sorry.
yes.
Okay. And then you give, he is the nephew of Keisha, who was a tenant at the McGregor Manor apartment complex, but they've moved now. Correct?
Correct, yes.
So you're conveying the information that you had gotten from the streets.
Yes, correct.
Now you say, I've heard Brandon's friends say they are looking for him. Does that mean they were trying to find him?
I am not sure. I'm just,
Well, it was your communication. These are your words.
that's what somebody had relayed to me, that they were looking for him.
Now, Davion Thompson is known as Tubbs to you, right? That's his nickname?
Yes, yes, he is known as Tops, yes.
I suppose because he's kind of tubby, right?
Yes, mhm.
Okay. And then you say he has me and Tubbs and some other of Brandon's friends. Then it skips to the next page. Well, it's in his page, in his about info, but Tubbs nor I can go to his page. He blocked us a couple days ago since he found out that we heard. You're referring to Tone, right?
Yes, uh-huh.
So it was your understanding that you were blocked from getting to the page.
Or I just don't know if he had his page private, but I know that I was not able to go to it.
And you also indicated Tubbs was as well, right?
Yes, uh-huh.
What street information did you have that Tone had heard about you guys a couple days before was why he cut you off?
That one of their mutual friends, Jamal, had told me that he paid what he had called clucks or crackheads in the apartment complex. He had paid them to see who had killed my son, and the people that lived in the apartment complex had told him that Antonio Parham had killed my son.
Okay. So when you say you were getting information from the streets, did you mean Jamel?
Well, yes, Jamal is one of the people that did give me some information. Yes, and I passed it on to the detective.
Okay. Then in smaller print towards the bottom of this page, there's a reference, I paid 3 clucks. They all gave me same name. Do you see that?
Yes, uh-huh.
That's not you that wrote that, is it?
No, that's me snapshotting a text message that Jamal had sent to me that I
Okay,
had sent to the detectives.
okay. So Jamel apparently paid 3 clucks for information about Tone.
Yes, yes.
Do you know what a cluck is?
I would assume a drug addict. I don't use those kind of words, but I assumed when he told me that he meant a drug addict.
And then the next line, his FB, which I assume is Facebook, his FB name.
Yes, I believe so.
Will brother, Burn Boy Tone is the same that was on that first page from the Facebook of Tone. Is that true?
Yes, FB means his Facebook name. Yes.
And this is a further communication from Jamel?
Yes.
And the
Yes.
next reference is, yes, I just found out too.
That's all him that I am passing on to the detectives.
Okay. You don't know what he found out at that point?
No, I wasn't sure. I just passed that whole message on to the detectives so they could work on it and figure it out.
And then there's a line, which side of the car was he found on? You see that?
Yes,
And then I need you to call me.
yes,
Was that directed to you to
Yes.
call him?
yes, that was directed to me.
Did you call him?
No. I passed the information to the detectives so they could work on it.
And then there's a repeat page on my copy. Do you have 2 pages of the same thing?
I'm not sure why there's 2 pages.
Okay, but there is. Just so the jury knows what,
Yes, there,
2 are the same, okay. So
Yes.
going to the very last page, which is not the same, it says it's Amber and last name starts with a G. Is that your communication?
that, I don't remember if that is, I believe I'm telling Detective Wortley that someone had told me that out there in the apartments is a girl and her name is Amber and her last name starts with a G.
What apartments are you talking about? Camelot?
The Bloomfield Apartments from the first page.
Okay. So when you say Bloomfield, you're referring to a specific apartment complex?
Yes, the apartment complex. Yes, correct. And I'm stating that there is an Amber. Somebody had told me there is an Amber out there and her last name starts with a G and that he was
What-
out there sometimes at that house.
Was there somebody who told you that, Jamel?
No, that was a different friend. I don't recall the name, but a different friend from this information that I had passed on to the detective.
Then at the bottom of the page, it says, the tone guy has me blocked. I can't go to his.
Well, either that or else his page is private. So
Okay, but that's the end of the exhibit.
sometimes if their page is private, you can't go to it either. So
Was that your communication that the tone guy had you blocked?
that, I don't know if that's mine. I don't recall if I sent that or not.
Okay. The Bloomfield apartment complex, would that be on the south side of Saginaw?
That is located, yes, more in the south side, kind of going towards Bridgeport area, yes.
Is that where Jamel was associated?
Not that I know of. I don't believe Jamal lived out there. No,
Do you know where he lived?
no, not 100% sure. No.
You said you didn't know his last name for sure?
I do not know his last name for sure.
And I thought you maybe told the jury that you couldn't remember it today, that you may have known it in the past? Or am I wrong about that?
That what? I'm sorry.
I thought you mentioned this morning to the jury that you couldn't
Oh, if I
remember.
saw him, if we saw each other and he was standing there, he would come up and speak to me and say, you know, hi, Cameron and Brandon's mom, how are you? And I would say, hi, Jamal. We would recognize each other most definitely.
Okay. Do you have any fear of Jamal?
No.
Judge, what I have is a transcript from an interview of Lisa Curtis from January 30th with Detective Wortley, Jacobs, and Lisa Curtis being present. I would like to give a copy of this so that she can look at it. I have some specific questions in regard to her response about Jamel.
Mr. Fedora.
And Your Honor, I think it's appropriate for purposes of refreshing Ms. Curtis's recollection. She hasn't actually, I guess, answered a question saying that she has a lack of memory at this point, so I don't know if it's appropriate to use it at this point.
Mr. O'Farrell.
I intend to elicit a prior inconsistent statement in regard to fear of Jamel.
Okay. I'll
And Your Honor-
allow,
Your Honor, may I respond?
all right.
Well, it sounds like an intent to offer impeachment evidence, but again, this isn't something that could be offered for that purpose. This could be offered to refresh recollection.
Well, I'll see if he can lay a proper foundation before he gets into the content of the interview. Is that what you intend to do, Mr. O'Farrell?
I agree, I got to comply with the rules, Judge.
Let's see if you can do that.
Thank you.
You mentioned this morning that you have fear for yourself and your safety of your daughter in regard to your testimony. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, correct.
And you just indicated to this jury that you have no fear of Jamel?
Correct.
Could you look to page 10 of the statement that was made of your statement to the detectives back on January 30th of 18?
Your Honor, sorry, I was distracted. Are you referring to a page number?
At 10.
Thank you.
It begins on page 9 as well. Can you take a few moments to read that to yourself?
I think the proper foundation, Mr. O'Farrell, first of all, ask the witness if she remembers in fact being interviewed by the detectives on that particular date.
Do you recall being interviewed on January 30th of 2018 by the police?
Yes, I do.
Is that one of the 3 interviews that you referred to this morning in response to the prosecutor's questioning?
Yes. Mhm.
Have you had a chance to read the portions to yourself?
Yes. Mhm.
Did the detectives tell you we're going to have to find Jamel and drag him into this? Do you see that?
Yes.
In your response, that puts me at risk. I have a daughter who's 7.
Yes.
Your Honor, I'm going to object and move to strike. I don't, and I'm just not getting this.
May I-
Again, Mr. O'Farrell can use. the
Can you
transcript.
speak more into the microphone, Mr. Fedoric?
So Mr. O'Farrell can use the transcript to refresh Ms. Curtis's recollection. And she read it. And so what's the question, I guess, to determine whether that helped refresh her recollection as to a particular question? He's just going through the transcript.
I believe his reason for doing so was he said it may have been a prior inconsistent statement on her behalf, and that's why he was going to the transcript to bring out that inconsistency. Is that correct, Mr. O'Farrell?
It is, Judge.
Objection overruled. Proceed.
Your response, this puts me at risk. I have a daughter who's 7. How do I know somebody like Jamel won't come after me or one of his friends? Is that your response then?
Yes. Yes.
So you were afraid of Jamel back in January 30th, which is 3 days after this happened, after Mr. Parham was killed, correct?
Yes. If you're asking me if I feel at risk or
Were you afraid of
threatened,
him?
I feel threatened now and at risk now. Yes, this whole entire time.
Well,
Yes.
and the police had just said he's going to have to be dragged into this. You didn't want that, did you?
I didn't want Jamal being dragged in, is that?
Correct.
I didn't mind about Jamal being dragged in. I don't want anything to happen to my daughter or myself.
Okay. So you do have a fear of Jamal.
I have a fear of all of this, not just anyone,
Okay.
not any specific person. I have a fear of
Okay.
this.
Now, Jamal was the
Testifying.
one who was getting this information, correct?
Yes,
He was paying Clucks to find out who killed your son.
yes,
He was conveying that information to you as the mother of Brandon.
yes, he did.
He probably wouldn't have been happy to find out that you sent his information on to the police, would he?
No,
Okay. So if he gets dragged into this, you certainly have a reason to fear him, don't you?
yes,
Now, going back to then, as you indicated to the prosecutor, you lied to the police several different times in your statements, didn't you?
yes,
All right. One was about your car. You told them that Davian had borrowed your car, which was true, correct?
yes,
But you've also indicated that because you were at work, you have no personal knowledge as to who brought your car back.
yes,
Is that a
Yes.
yes?
yes.
Okay. I can't really, if I'm upsetting you and you need a break, just tell us, okay?
I will. Thank you.
Okay. And we got to speak up. I'm sorry, but that's the way it is.
No, I understand.
Thank you. Now, you also told the police that your gun had come up missing about 4 days before you lent your car to Davion. Is that right?
Yes,
And you, if you didn't explicitly, you implied to the police that you thought Davion had stolen your gun or taken it from you. Is that what you conveyed to the police?
I don't recall.
Well, you changed that story, didn't you? You told the police that you gave the gun to Davion.
Yes,
Didn't
I
you?
ended up telling them the truth. Yes,
Well, that's your next story. Is that correct? You say it's the truth. It's the next story you told. Do you agree with that?
I told them, I ended up telling them the exact truth.
All right. Now, you've indicated today that Davion told you to say to the police that he had lost his phone.
Yes, he told me on the car ride there that he never had my car and that his phone was at the hospital, that he did not have his phone.
Now, you indicated this morning that the last communications you had by phone with Davion was that he was still looking for a job and he still wanted to keep the car because he was still looking. Do you recall testifying to that?
Yes,
Didn't you get a Facebook communication that he had to miss his interview because he was sick?
I don't recall that, no.
Did you get a Facebook communication, in fact, that you had, or that he had lost his phone and he thought it was either at the hospital or the doctor's office?
No, I don't recall that.
May I approach, Judge?
You may.
Your Honor, can I ask what counsel is approaching with?
It's a report from Wenger, which I'll use to refresh memory since it's not her statement.
I'm sorry.
Well,
I'm sorry, what is it she doesn't recall?
Facebook communication she's testified to.
Sorry, guys, apologize.
Judge, if I can have a second, I
These
may
are
be able
very
to go at
sturdy.
this a different way.
You have to keep that strap low in the back, and that'll keep the face shield on overall. So I don't know if it's too tight to keep it low in the back. All right.
Judge, I'll withdraw that question.
Okay.
Going to refer you to the transcript from the first trial, September 4th of 2019, volume 4, pages 23 and over onto the top of 24. And Judge, I only have the one copy. If I can approach and let her look at it, and then,
You may.
thank you.
All right. Yes, that's when I had contacted him on Facebook because I wasn't able to reach him on his cell phone. I kept calling and calling, and it was saying not in service, and I couldn't reach him. So I had to contact him on Facebook.
Okay, that's what you told the jury this morning, right?
Yes, I did reach him on Facebook, yes. And he came over the next day.
Okay. Okay. So, just if I may, from the transcript of your prior testimony, in the trial back in September, you were under oath, is that correct?
Yes,
You were testifying in front of a jury just as you are now, correct?
yes,
And you were asked a question, but there came a time where you got no response at that phone, is that correct? And then, yes, correct. And so you used means of Facebook to contact Davion, yes. And then you also, once he was on Facebook, you found out he had a new phone number, is that correct? Or, no, I didn't, I don't recall that. Question, okay, do you recall Davion saying that he had lost his phone either at the doctor's office or the hospital? I don't recall him saying that, sorry. Is that your response?
he didn't say that in the text message. He had said that to me in the car ride to the police station. That's when he had said that to me.
May I approach with the reference to her interview by the detectives on in January, Judge. It's 2 sentences I'd like her to read for purposes of a prior inconsistent.
All right, with regard to the transcript you just had to read, Mr. O'Farrell, are you through with that in terms of this line of questioning?
For now, yes, Judge.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Your Honor, I'm kind of getting lost here where we're at. There's a report Mr. O'Farrell is referring to. Can you show that to me?
It's the first interview of Lisa Curtis referred to in the report of Wenger.
Okay. And what line are you asking her to read?
Down the second paragraph from the bottom.
And Mr. O'Farrell, what's the date of the interview and who's present?
It indicates the date of first interview, the date of the report, Judge?
No, are you referring to an interview you want to have her take a look at now or a report you want to have her take a look at now?
It's the report of her interview.
Okay, when did the interview supposedly take place?
It's the first one, Judge, so it would have been, I would say the 30th.
Your Honor, I believe this is a reference to the 8:30 interview on January 30th.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know if Mr. O'Farrell just wants to use the transcript of the interview.
I didn't hear anything you said either, Mr. Fedoruk, after the date of the interview.
Sorry, Your Honor, just still getting used to the microphones. So I believe Mr. O'Farrell is referring to the 8:30 a.m. January 30th interview. So I don't know if Mr. O'Farrell can just refer to the transcript. I'm just not sure where he's going with this.
I don't have it in the transcript. I have the summary. Does counsel have the transcript?
So I guess this is something that Ms. Curtis said that isn't something that she said in the interview,
No, this is what she said in the interview.
but it's not in the transcript. Your Honor, I have a lot of concerns with this cross-examination.
So I'm clear. Mr. O'Farrell, you're referring to an interview that took place January 30th with Ms. Curtis and some detectives.
Yes.
The report you want to show her indicates that was the case. You don't necessarily have the transcript of the interview itself, but you want to make reference to the interview in the report.
Yes.
Proceed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. Mhm.
Does this indicate she had contact with suspect over Facebook? The suspect told her he lost his cell phone at the hospital or doctor's office.
Your Honor, I'm going to object again. Mr. O'Farrell's reading from a report, a police report, which I was on the understanding that was used to refresh the witness.
I
Mr.
had
Fedoruk,
contacted
will you
him.
speak into the microphone, please?
Your Honor, my objection is that my understanding was Mr. O'Farrell was using the report to refresh the witness's recollection. Now he's reading the report.
Response, Mr. O'Farrell.
I'm trying to get if she made an inconsistent statement back on January 30th, Judge. This is the report of that statement. She's read it. I should be able to ask her if she said it.
Ms. Curtis, did you say that?
Can I see it again, please?
Pardon?
Can I see it again, please?
Okay. Which portion are we referring to in particular, Mr. O'Farrell, in the report? portion, which statement are you referring to in particular, so she can look at the particular statement you're asking her about?
Because that is on a new day. That's on Monday after he came over to Don's house. And Garland has a phone. I was able to contact him then. After they had came over to Don's house and I had talked to them, I was able to contact Tubb on Garland's phone. And then we went down to the police department. So I was able to contact him after Sunday. It was, I think you're getting confused. It was on Saturday that I was trying to reach him all day and was unable to reach him. Sent him a message on Facebook. He shows up to the house the next day, Sunday, at Don's house. I asked him, how can I reach you? And they gave me Garland's phone number. So I'm able to reach him after that. It was Saturday all day that I was unable to reach him, sir.
Yeah, so you had a new phone number by Sunday.
Yes, they ended up coming over to the house on Sunday,
On
correct.
Sunday, okay. But this says,
And we went to the police on Monday or Tuesday, I believe.
okay,
It's been so long ago, but it was Monday or Tuesday.
In your honor, it sounds like the witness recalls the events, and so I don't see any need to refresh her recollection.
well, it's not refreshing recollection because it's a prior inconsistent statement.
And
When
Ms.
was
Curtis
the-
didn't write the report.
When was the first time that you told the police that you had been told by Davion that he was done with the car and he had taken care of what he needed to take care of?
He had told me that on Sunday when he had came over.
And have you told that all along?
Yes,
That's not something that you just told to the police on October 26th of 2020?
I don't recall. It's been a long time.
Well, we were trying to go to trial in this case in November. Do you recall that?
Yes, I do.
And I'm talking about this past November 2020.
Yes,
And then we had to get adjourned because of the pandemic. Is that
because of
true?
COVID, yes.
Okay. But just prior to that, had you spoken with the detectives about preparation for the trial?
No, the only time I have spoke with the detectives is when we all went in on that Monday or Tuesday, which would have been, I'm losing track of the years, this is 2021. That happened.
You weren't interviewed on October 26th, which was a Monday at about 11:18. Oh, I'm sorry, that's the date of the email. You weren't interviewed on that date by the detective and the prosecutor?
You're referring to this past October
I know,
2020?
Yes.
Okay, you understand that question, Ms. Curtis?
Yes,
Okay.
You were not interviewed then?
No, I did speak with the prosecutor and the detective on that day.
Is that where you first time disclosed or told the story about Davion's communicating these things about his phone and to say that he had lost his phone?
I don't recall that.
You don't recall ever having said
I
it
don't
before,
recall
do
if
you?
we brought up in the first trial about the phone. I don't recall that. Sorry, I don't.
So this is something different from the first trial.
Yes, I don't recall if that was brought up. I
All right.
apologize.
Now, you've had trouble, and I understand completely, trying to remember back to what's happened 3 years ago,
Yes.
back in January of 18.
Yes,
And yet, on October 26th, of 2020, you had a new recollection of what had happened back then. Is that correct?
I don't recall that.
You said at the preliminary examination, which was back in May of 18, that Davion had confessed to shooting Mr. Parham
Yes,
at Don Pennywell's house.
yes, he did it, Don's, yes,
And you've described that today to the
yes,
jury here.
yes,
And you've said that within just a few feet, there was Garland and there was Donald Pennywell, the father of your twins.
yes. I'm not good with the measurement, the whole feet thing, but probably from about, I was here and I would say Don was probably about where the court reporter is sitting, and Garland and Davion were probably next to, right there, where that pole is.
Thank you for giving us a kind of a relation of,
You're welcome.
without, who cares how many feet it is, you just described it, okay? Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
So you were under oath at the preliminary examination back on May 30th of 2018, is that correct?
Yes, mhm,
And that's when you first testified about this confession of Davion.
yes, mhm,
And you said that these people were present and that all you got to do is ask them and they'll tell you the same thing. Do you remember saying that?
Your Honor,
Yes.
what page is counsel
Page
on?
60?
Preliminary exam?
Yes.
And I'm sorry, Your Honor, what was the question?
I guess I'll withdraw the question and show it to her, Judge. That's probably fair.
Okay.
Page 60.
thank you.
You might have to orient by looking back at the prior page.
Yes, sir.
And Your Honor, while we're waiting, I believe the question elicits hearsay testimony as to what something that something about Donald Pennywell. So I object to that.
I can't rule on your objection because I don't know what the question was, Mr.
Thank you.
Fedoruk, until he asked her the question. So I can't rule on your objection at this point in time.
You asked the question, and the father of Brandon was, answer, yup. And the father was right there too. And I'm sure if we have to bring him in here and it comes down to it, he will say the same thing.
And I object to that, Your Honor.
On what basis?
It's a speculative statement as to the father and his actions.
Overruling objection. Proceed.
Thank you, Judge. You were under oath at the time of your testimony on May 30th of 2018, is that correct?
Yes, correct.
And this morning, the prosecutor asked you questions about Mr. Pennywell, the father of your twins,
Yes.
also being a friend of Davion.
Yes.
And in fact, Mr. Pennywell did not say the same thing that you did he? You said under oath that if he were called, he would say the same thing you did. Do you remember saying that?
I'm going
Yes,
to
I-
object, Your Honor.
On what basis?
The question is asking for what Donald Pennywell would do or say.
What he did.
I've already ruled on your objection on what he would do. He's asking her, did he say the same thing she said? So what's the basis of your objection?
So again, well, that would be hearsay as far as what he would say.
She's not getting into what he said. He's asking if he said something different than what she said. So that's not hearsay. I'll overrule the objection. Do you understand the question, or do you remember the question, Ms. Curtis?
Yes, I do
Okay.
remember. Yes.
Can you answer?
Yes, if he would say the same thing, I would, yes, that I would say he would say the same thing. He was right in the room.
Okay, but he
But
didn't.
again, I'm not him. I don't know what he's gonna tell you guys in court. I know that he wants to stay completely out of this and he wants nothing to do with this, he said. That's
Well,
what
there's
I do
hearsay,
know.
Judge. I would ask that that be stricken.
Mr. O'Farrell, I'm trying to keep the door closed, but you both keep kicking it open on me. So let's see if I can ask the question and clarify this. When Mr. Pennywell testified previously, he didn't say the same thing you said, did he?
I wasn't in the courtroom.
Okay.
Thank you.
Next question, Mr. O'Farrell. Thank you.
Wasn't in the courtroom.
That's okay.
Okay.
Now, hang on just a moment.
You asked it very well.
Just want to follow up a little bit more, if I may, about your fear or lack of fear of Jamel. Okay?
Yes.
We already went through the statements that you gave back on January 30th of 18 about your fear of risk if Jamel was dragged into this.
Yes.
You've said today you have no fear of Jamel.
I have fear of testifying and speaking about this right, yes, today with everything, with everyone. I do have fear. Yes, yes. I almost feel as if I have to move away after testifying and doing this, just for my safety.
Well, let me You understand, of course, that Davion's been charged with this offense since January 31st, 4 days after it happened, correct?
Yes.
You understand that your testimony implicates him.
Yes.
You understand that Jamel doesn't want to get dragged into this.
I haven't even spoken to Jamal since this. I don't know.
Okay.
Sorry.
Well, you have a fear of Jamel, don't you?
I don't have a fear of him personally. I have a fear of this whole trial, and I don't know who could be after me for sitting up here testifying. I don't know.
Well, one person you're not afraid of is Davion, is that correct?
I didn't say that.
You haven't mentioned him among the people that you've been fearful of. You have mentioned Jamel.
Is that a question, Mr. O'Farrell?
It is.
I just said I'm
I put a
scared.
question mark at the end of it, Judge.
Why don't you rephrase it?
You haven't indicated that you have a fear of Davion.
Your Honor, can we approach?
Only if you must.
In what Exhibit 1, the information that you gave to the police, you indicated was information you got off the streets, correct?
Yes, correct.
And you indicated that Jamel was one of those sources?
Yes, he was correct. Yes.
You indicated this morning that back in this time frame, you were taking medications that were not prescribed for you.
Yes, I was.
And where did you get those?
I would buy
Mr.
them.
O'Farrell, what's the relevance of where she got them from?
Thank you.
Maybe we approach?
Okay. Please. Ms. Curtis, you can step outside too.
Okay,
for this.
thank you.
Okay.
Is there a certain amount of time? Oops, can't take this.
Oh.
Is there a certain amount of time? How long?
No, we just, I don't know how long.
Oh,
it's gonna
just a
take.
little bit. Okay.
Yeah, just step outside.
Okay.
Thank you. Records reflect the jury is not present at this time, and I've had the witness Lisa Curtis step outside as well. Mr. O'Farrell, you had raised the question about where she'd gotten the drugs from. I asked you what the relevance was. You asked her to approach the bench. I want to make sure I understand exactly what your position is before we proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'm getting to the point of her arrest back in 2019 in possession of opioids, which has previously been ruled that I couldn't go into on extrinsic evidence. My understanding of the premise for that being is that she had testified truthfully about that incident in the first trial as a basis for excluding her impeachment. Today, in this trial, she was asked if she took some non-prescription medications, and she listed 2. And then she was shown from page 41 from the first trial where we had this issue being taken up, and she admitted to a 3rd one. It wasn't clear whether those were prescribed or not described as the admission was. Estelle made me a copy. The court has one also.
I do.
So, Judge, the prosecutor is purposely trying to misinform this jury that this lady was only saddened because of the loss of her sons, and therefore not only took her prescription medication, but may have taken some non-prescription as well. In fact, from the history that she gave when she was arrested with all of these opioids on her, she had indicated that she I'm sorry, let me get the right page, Judge.
Which
Probably
report?
easiest to just read the whole thing for the record here, Judge. Curtis claimed ownership of the medications and stated there was Vicodin, Norco, Percocet, and Adderall in the bottle I found. She stated none of the medications were prescribed to her. I confirmed the purse in which the pills were located was hers. Curtis stated she did not have prescriptions for any of the medications, and they did not belong to anyone else in the vehicle. Curtis stated she initially started taking Vicodin for a back injury in the past. She then started using pills again after the passing of her 2 sons. Curtis stated she uses 4 or 5 pills per day to help her feel better about losing her sons. She stated some days she did not use any. Curtis stated she received the pills from friends of hers whom had prescriptions, or she bought them off the street in Saginaw. Judge, I think it's important that the jury get the picture in this case. We have Jamal, who gives her information from the streets that she gives to the police. She's purchasing drugs on the streets. There's reference to a clock, which we also had testimony from Detective Jacobs in the first trial about the vehicle being a cluck car and what a cluck car is. We had the statement from my client in the first trial that he picked up and dropped the car off on the south side, which Detective Jacobs testified was a high crime, high drug location area. And this lady I think should be able to be confronted, or the jury is entitled to hear that she wasn't just getting information, she was dealing with this guy, and that he is a person that she should be fearful of. And that's one reason why she's testifying in the manner that she is.
Okay. Response, Mr. Fedork. Mr. O'Farrell, I guess I'm still going to have you, in your opinion, answered the question about the relevance of where she got the drugs from? Are you satisfied with the answer you've given the court at this point? Because I'm gonna let him respond if you're satisfied with your answer.
Yes.
Mr. Fedork.
Your Honor, cut me off if you want, but just to read the
What'd you
court's
say?
order. I say, if you wish to cut me off, but I
Why
just
would you
want,
say that?
well, I just wanted to cite the court's order as far as the people's motion in limine. And if you don't want me to read that, then
I want you to respond to my question to him. You can respond however you want. If you want to use something I've said, that's fine. You want to use a case, that's fine. You want to use your own opinion, that's fine. But to start off by saying cut you off if I want, you need to respond to the question before the court. So proceed.
thank you, Your Honor. I apologize for my wording, but basically the court had ordered that extrinsic evidence regarding Ms. Curtis's drug usage is inadmissible. So what Mr. O'Farrell is doing in a roundabout way, she's trying to get to this police stop back in, I can't remember the date, but none of that is relevant to this particular case. Ms. Curtis did give testimony as far as the medications that she had been using. And then if you look at her testimony from her cross-examination from the first trial, page 42, the medications that she cited that she had been using prior to getting clean, those are consistent with the medications that she cited using in that first trial. So there hasn't been anything inconsistent here that really invites impeachment. And moreover, the court's already ordered that any extrinsic evidence, including a police stop that occurred a number of months after this murder and Ms. Curtis's involvement, is completely irrelevant. Mr. O'Farrell, I guess as it is, he's trying to dwell into or get into where Ms. Curtis obtained the medications. I guess that was the question. And that's completely irrelevant. Again, the court's order was, it was allowed that she would, whether she was using medications or not, where she got them, that's not relevant to impeachment or anything else.
Okay. Anything else, Mr. O'Farrell?
Judge, if we go back to the impeachment rule, as far as using extrinsic evidence, I think this clearly establishes it in this trial, because the distinction here from the first trial is she's not being confronted with her history, which I alluded to the 2019 arrest. The court would not let me get into it, but it was before the jury fairly in that context that she had an issue with opioids. That's been completely distorted in this trial because the prosecutor's taken advantage of that ruling of the court to try to soft soap what the jury is hearing, to the extent that they're not going to know anything about this. And it's critical, Judge, because it goes right back to the time of the homicide, goes right back to when she's getting the information from the streets, and it goes right back to support that, in fact, it wasn't my client who dropped the car off out at the house after the shooting. It wasn't my client who used the car at that time. My client had left the car on the south side as he described. And all of that information should be assessed by this jury. The fact that it's somewhat extrinsic, when that history comes in, I expect the state trooper to testify that that history is exactly what she told him at the time. And that is something the jury should hear about what her behavior was back at the time of the homicide of Mr. Parham.
Okay. Let me see if I can put all the rabbits back in the pen that you guys have let loose and start off by saying, Mr. O'Farrell, I'm not going to let you get in that line of questioning because in this court's opinion, it's irrelevant where she got the drugs from. In fact, her testimony today was she took the drugs because she was depressed because of her sons. She told a trooper, according to the report you just read, the exact same thing. So in this court's assessment, there is no inconsistency in that or her testimony today. I ruled on it before, I ruled on it again this time. Your position is noted for the record, as is Mr. Fedorik's. Anything else on that issue, gentlemen?
Your Honor, I would like to offer a copy of the police report just so we have it for the record.
Fine. We can mark it separately and it'll be part of the record. Anything else on this issue?
Nothing from the people.
Mr. O'Farrell.
So the court believes I cannot go into anything further about her use of the medications as they've been called in this trial?
I believe you cannot go into where she got them from. I believe you cannot go into that traffic stop again. That's what I'm saying. Yes.
So I will not be able to introduce the trooper?
No. Consistent with my previous ruling and this ruling and the same facts in this case, in this court's opinion. No, you'll not be able to introduce the trooper.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else on this issue, Mr. O'Farrell?
I'll just have this report marked, Judge.
Okay, before we get to that, Mr. Fedorik, you had approached the bench also while Mr. O'Farrell was questioning the witness. What did you want to bring up since we don't have the jury here now?
Thank you, Your Honor. So my concern was there was a line of questioning to Ms. Curtis as to whether she fears Davion Thompson. I saw that she was appropriately hesitant to answer the question because the problem is what it does is it elicits, first of all, I know that she does fear him. It elicits, you know, a response, well, he's in jail right now. As long as he's in jail or prison, she's not going to have a worry, have a concern. But my ability to, I'm going to be limited in being able to address that. Obviously, because of the issue of bringing up the fact that he is incarcerated right now. So that was my concern. And it sounds like, you know, and I don't know if Mr. O'Farrell is opening a door here, but that's my concern.
So your concern is he's opening the door or you don't want to open the door, or if he's opening it, you want to go through it. What's your concern?
Well, if I'm permitted to pursue that line of questioning as to, you know, whether Ms. Curtis would be afraid of him if he was out of custody, then that's fine if I'm able to do that. And I'll defer to the court.
You have a response, Mr. O'Farrell?
I don't think I opened the door, Judge, by questioning about what was her prior statements in regard to Jamel,
You also mentioned Mr. Thompson in your questioning as well.
but I didn't pursue it after we approached the bench.
Well, Mr. Fedorik, if he doesn't go back into it anymore, I won't allow you to go back into that question as well. Because once again, in the court's opinion, it's totally irrelevant whether she's afraid of Mr. Thompson or not, whether he's in jail or not. She's testified contrary to his interests at this point in time. But even if she is afraid of him, it hasn't impacted her testimony in this particular situation. Let me put that rabbit back in the pen too for both of you. Anything else?
No, Your Honor. Thank you.
Let's take a short break.
in Exhibit 1, you indicated you also had information from 2 men you encountered at the Marathon gas station,
Yes, correct.
and those were 2 males?
Yes, 2 males, yes.
Okay. Did you know them to be friends of Brandon?
Yes, I knew of them, didn't know them personally, but I did know of them.
I'm not
Miss,
hearing you,
Curtis,
Rick.
can you speak louder? Mr.
Oh.
O'Farrell, can you speak louder as well?
Sorry.
Okay.
You don't need that microphone. You've got the other one.
This
on.
one right here.
Yeah, speak into that.
Okay. Is that better?
Yeah, yes.
Okay.
Now, did you convey the information from those 2 to the police as well?
Yes, I did. Yes.
Did you know their names?
I did not know their names, no.
Do you recall, did they indicate to you that they would take care of it?
No, I don't recall that.
I have no further questions at this time.
All right. Anything else, Mr. Fedoric?
Like that.
Hello again, Ms. Curtis.
Hi.
Just to confirm, so you had testified about a call you made to Davion on January 26th, correct?
Yes, uh-huh.
Okay. So I just want to make sure you gave a time around 1 o'clock in the afternoon. 3 years have passed
Yes.
since then. I just want to make sure you're obviously not, or do you recall the exact time, or is it just kind of a rough?
I don't recall the exact time. I was guessing approximately.
Okay, so early afternoon, though, that's a good guess.
Yes. Yes.
Just to confirm, Mr. O'Farrell referred you to some things that were written in Saginaw Police Department police reports.
Yes.
You remember that?
Yes.
Okay. You yourself didn't write those reports, correct?
No, I did not.
There was something a little bit confusing that was asked about the Sunday meeting at Don Pennywell's with Davion. At that time, you were able to reach Davion by Facebook Messenger just prior to that Sunday, correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay. And that was after the Parham murder that you reached Davion by Facebook Messenger?
Yes, correct.
Mr. Fedoric, I don't want to cut you off, but is this any new material you're going to be covering, or is it going to be rehashed what Mr. O'Farrell already covered?
Your Honor, it's just clarification.
Okay.
And I'm just trying to clarify because there's some things I was confused as far as the questions Mr. O'Farrell was getting into, and I think there might have been something that came across the wrong way, if I may.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. So, Ms. Curtis, as far as, because I think it was phrased as that Davion got a new phone number, right? But you never got a new phone number for
No,
Davion.
I never had his new number, correct.
Okay. Your contact after Davion's phone was not in service was by Facebook Messenger, correct?
Yes, correct.
And just to clarify, when you brought up with the detectives on January 30th, that Davion said he lost his phone, was that because Davion told you to tell them he had lost his phone?
Yes.
And I'll need you to answer
Yes,
loudly.
yes.
But you weren't telling the detectives that Davion had actually lost his phone.
No, I was not telling them that. I was saying that he had told me to say that.
Okay. Because you knew that he didn't actually lose his phone, correct?
Correct. I knew that, yes.
Sorry, and again, if
Yes,
you can.
yes, correct. I knew that.
Nothing further, Your Honor. Thank you.
Anything else, Mr. O'Farrell?
Just a couple, if I may, Judge.
Yep.
Ms. Curtis, you're telling this jury that Davion told you to say he lost his phone.
Yes, correct.
And you first told that to the police on October 26th of 2020.
Not that I recall.
Well, certainly back on January 30th of 2018, you told the police about the Facebook and that he had lost his phone at, he thought, either the doctor's office or the hospital.
Correct. I've said this a couple times
I'm
when
sorry, I can't hear you.
went to take him to the detectives on that day. He told me to tell them that he had never had my car and that he lost his phone at the hospital.
Okay. So you let that lie stand through 2 subsequent police interviews, 1 preliminary examination, and 1 trial before you're telling it to this jury.
I'm sorry? I don't.
You say you lied back on January 30th in your first statement to the police. Is that what you're telling this jury?
I'm saying that he told me to say that he never had his phone. Yes.
So you lied. You told the police that he had lost his phone because he told you to say that. Is that
Yes,
what you're
he
telling
did.
this jury?
Yes, he did tell me to say that.
So you lied to the police.
Objection, Your Honor. I'm not sure how it's a lie. It's just her communicating information.
Mr. Fedoruk, you opened this door by asking questions about it. So I'm going to allow Mr. O'Farrell to continue that line of questioning.
So you lied to the police in your first interview on the 30th.
I was scared. I already have mentioned that I was.
All right. And you let that stand lie. You let it stay for a second interview, a third interview, your preliminary examination under oath, and your first trial in this case under oath. You're only telling that to this jury this morning. Is that correct?
I don't recall that.
I have no further questions.
You may step down, Ms. Curtis.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Call your next witness, Mr. Fedoruk.
And Your Honor, at this time, the people are going to call Caitlin Bishop, and this will be via video. So I'll just need a minute.
Okay. And Mr. O'Farrell, any objection to the witness testifying via video?
No, there is not, Judge.
All right. I think also we could just take a break. I believe we can hook this up to the monitor to bring it closer to the jury so they can see it better. If Mr. Snow is available.
Do you want me to bring up are we gonna iterate my CV? Should I bring up a copy? Yeah. Okay. I do. They may not be as thorough as before.
Please be seated. Jurors in the back, before we begin, can you see the screen? Raise your hand if you can. You can. Can you? Whew, thank you. Okay. Mr. Fedoruk, you may call your next witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. The people called Dr. Caitlin Bishop.
All right. Ms. Bishop will have to be sworn.
Please raise your right hand, ma'am. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you shall give in this cause here pending shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
Proceed, Your Honor.
Proceed.
Thank you. Dr. Bishop, this is Mark Fedoruk from the Saginaw County Prosecuting Attorney. You can hear me?
I can.
Okay. And you probably can't see me, but just wanted to identify myself. Could you please state your full name for the record
Caitlin Bishop.
and spell your first and last?
Kaitlyn Bishop.
And Your Honor, before I proceed, does the court want the volume turned
I'd
up?
like to turn the volume up a little.
Thank you.
Proceed.
Thank you. And Your Honor, the parties did stipulate to Dr. Bishop being qualified as an emergency medicine expert.
That's correct, Judge.
All right, we should be so recognized as an expert in that field.
And in addition to that, the parties also stipulated to the admission of People's Exhibit 109 for identification. So we would offer that into evidence at this time.
Mr. O'Farrell.
Your Honor, that's reference to the medical records of Mr. Thompson for treatment, which I had marked as Exhibit 121. So I have no problem under either number, Judge.
So what's the exhibit number, Mr. Fedoric?
Is People's Exhibit 109?
So that's what you're moving to admit, exhibit 109.
Correct.
Exhibit 109 would be admitted.
Thank you, Your Honor. Dr. Bishop, do you recall treating a Davion Thompson at one point?
As the record shows, yes.
Okay. You don't have any independent knowledge of treating him, but you've reviewed your records that you treated him.
Correct.
All right. And do you recall the date that you treated Mr. Thompson?
The date, as the record shows, is January 25th, 2018.
And I'm not sure if it came through correctly. Is it January 25th or 26th?
25th and 26th. He was admitted on the 25th through the ER and discharged early on the 26th.
Okay, thank you. And what time was he admitted on January 25th?
Per the record, 10:48 was the arrival to the ER on the 25th.
And that's 10:48 p.m.?
Correct.
And according to your notes, did you have an opportunity to contact Mr. Thompson and I guess talk to him about what symptoms he had?
Correct. Yes.
And what did he indicate his symptoms were?
As the record shows, he was complaining of a sore throat and nausea, as well as some shortness of breath, and some myalgias, which are muscle aches, as well as chest pain and headaches.
All right. And then you were informed of an underlying condition that he had?
Correct. He had asthma.
All right. Now, you had the opportunity to observe him. What observations did you make?
As far as my note shows and per his vital signs, he was febrile, tachycardic, and tachypnic. So he was having some shortness of breath, but he also had a fever. And that is probably contributing to his fast heart rate and his fast breathing rate, as well as my physical exam. I noted that he had tonsillar hypertrophy, which means large tonsils, and tonsillar exudates, which is essentially pus, as well as some anterior cervical lymphadenopathy, which is typical with upper respiratory infections.
And was he able to walk into the hospital and walk to the ER room where you treated him?
Yes, the record said that he ambulated.
And that means walked?
Correct.
And given what you had found, did you diagnose him with anything?
Yes, mononucleosis.
And mononucleosis, is that something that's contagious?
It is.
And how would it be spread?
It's usually close contact, so usually spread by saliva.
Okay. And in Mr. Thompson's case, that's what you found?
Correct.
And was there anything as far as medications or treatments that you administered?
Yes, Mr. Thompson received Decadron, which is a steroid, as well as a breathing treatment, which is listed as a Duoneb. And let me just confirm with the record, but I believe Tylenol and Motrin as well, but let me just confirm. Yeah, he got Motrin and Tylenol, as well as Zofran, which is a medication for nausea, and the Duoneb, which was the breathing treatment, and Decadron, which is a steroid.
And with respect to those medications that were administered, are any of those have side effects where a person cannot operate a vehicle?
No.
And with that treatment, did Mr. Thompson's condition improve?
It did. If you look at the vital signs, his vital signs throughout the visit did improve, and were documented to have improved, as well as his pain score.
And so with that, when you did discharge him at that point, was he healthy enough to, I guess, walk out of the hospital on his own?
Yes, the record shows that he ambulated out of the hospital. And typically, you know, my typical practice pattern is the patient should be able to ambulate on their own and be well enough to care for themselves for me to discharge the patient from the emergency department.
All right. And were there any particular observations you made of Thompson's condition when he was discharged?
Any particular observations?
For instance,
Not that I recall.
All right. So for instance, his vital signs?
The vital signs are always taken upon discharge. If I can just have a second, I'll pull up his, or at least reference his vital signs prior to discharge. It looks like he had his vital signs taken at approximately 1:40 in the morning on the 26th, and his respirations were 16, which is an average respiratory rate, with a heart rate of 74, which is within normal limits. His oxygen level was good. And so his vital signs at that time were stable.
And as far as his symptoms, had those improved then?
Yeah, I believe he did report an improvement of symptoms.
All right. And where was he when you treated him? Was he in his own room, or was this a large room
Correct.
that had things separating, curtains separating the room?
We don't have any curtain separated rooms in the department, so everything would have been a private room.
All right. And what time was was Mr. Thompson discharged?
He was discharged at 2:26 in the morning on the 26th.
And did you happen to notice that Thompson left anything behind at the hospital when he left?
I did not notice anything, no.
And then as far as the condition that Mr. Thompson was in at this time, he would be fine driving, correct?
Correct. So typically with someone being seen for an upper respiratory infection, the medications that I gave Mr. Thompson are typical of my practice pattern. And the fact that he improved as far as symptom-wise and vital signs, I would have determined that he was stable for discharge.
Okay. And was his activity recommended to be limited in any way?
Typically, my practice pattern is not to limit activity with mono other than contact sports. I would have always told a patient diagnosed with mono not to participate in any contact sports, as well as to wash their hands well, and reiterate to them that it was a communicable disease. But again, it's one that's spread by close contact.
And then before discharging him, was there anything you prescribed?
Pardon?
Was there anything you prescribed for him when he was discharged?
I don't see that in the record. I don't believe I did, but let me check his discharge summary. My typical practice pattern would just be Motrin and Tylenol as needed over the counter. So I do not believe that I would have prescribed anything, but let me double check the record. Correct, I didn't prescribe anything.
And did you recommend or say anything about whether he should wear a mask?
No, that's not my practice pattern.
Okay, thank you.
Are you through, Mr. Fedora?
Yes, Your Honor.
Questions, Mr. O'Farrell?
Thank you, Judge. Good afternoon, Doctor.
Good afternoon.
You indicated, I believe, that Mr. Thompson presented with underlying asthma.
Correct.
Was he taking medications or prescribed medications for treatment for his asthma?
Per the record, I believe that he was. Let me just check.
I'm looking at page 6.
I
on the
believe
report.
that he was taking Ventolin as needed, as well as fluticasone, which is a Flonase inhaler, and a Dulera inhaler. So he was taking medications for asthma.
And he was taking 3 different inhalers?
Flonase is typically something that's over the counter. But for his asthma, he did have an inhaler. The albuterol inhaler is prescribed as needed for shortness of breath. And then he was on a Dulera, which is a medication that you take daily, regardless of your symptoms.
Okay. So he would have been expected to continue his treatment for asthma. You didn't have to get into that. Is that correct?
Could you say that one more time?
You would have expected him to continue his asthma treatment. You wouldn't have had to get
Correct.
into that. Okay.
Correct. I would expect him to continue his prior to arrival medications unless indicated by me to stop them.
Okay. Now, you indicated that mono is communicable as an upper respiratory illness. Is that correct?
It is.
And I believe you said close contact would have been your specificity as far as that?
Typically, it's close contact.
Since 2018 with the COVID, would you classify COVID as close contact?
If I were to classify COVID, I would not put them in the same category as mono. COVID is exceptionally contagious. The respiratory particles are very small. I would, yes, say that COVID is communicable by close contact, but I would say that it is much more easily spread than a disease process like mono.
Okay. You indicated that you would not necessarily prescribe a mask, but you wouldn't be against a person wearing a mask if they were diagnosed with mono, would you?
Correct.
Okay. If they wanted to be precautious, they could take that? Or they could wear a mask?
Correct.
Thank you, Doctor. I have no further questions.
Anything else, Mr. Fedora?
Your Honor, just really briefly. Dr. Bishop, again, in Mr. Thompson's case, was a subject of masks ever even discussed?
I would not have routinely discussed something like that pre-COVID, no.
Okay. And then were masks available at the hospital for someone if they just wanted to request them?
I'm sure that they were available. It's something that, we've become obviously acutely aware of as of recent times, but I very rarely got before requested a mask. And I mean, I'm sure that if he wanted one and requested one, somebody would have given him one, but I did not.
Okay, thank you. That's all.
Any follow-up, Mr. O'Farrell?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you, doctor. We're all set.
Okay.
All right. Mr. Fedoruk, you can call your next witness.
And, Your Honor, the people intended to call Matthew Giroux. Just want to check with the court. I'm not sure if we'll be able to finish by 5.
Okay.
That's okay? Okay. Sorry, Your Honor. Sergeant Giroux left. I know it'll take him about 5 minutes to return.
No, 5 minutes usually turns into 15. Is that your last witness for the day, I assume?
Correct.
All right, we're going to break for the evening, ladies and gentlemen. I give you your half hour back. I had you waiting this morning, okay? So I'm going to caution you once again not to discuss the case among yourselves nor anyone else. And should there be any news reports about this case, do not read, listen to, or watch them. Have a pleasant evening. I also want to pass out one thing to you before you go. There's going to be a vaccination clinic taking place here at the event center tomorrow. It's going to be on that end of the building, but because of that, we're going to have some parking restrictions. I want each of you to park to the left of this, where we're seated now. Yes, the lot closest to Jefferson and Johnson. And we're going to give you a map to tell you exactly how to get there. So you're going to be parking at the far end of the building when you come in tomorrow, okay? This part is probably going to be congested and whatnot. So you just come down and come around and then come into the parking lot. When you come into the parking lot, turn to your right and there's the parking lot. But we're going to give you a diagram as well. All right? You have a question? Still an option? Give you a map about the parking lot right here. If you're parking in the ramp, that's fine too. So have a pleasant evening after we give you your map, and we'll see you tomorrow at 9 a.m. She'll give you in your jury room your maps, okay? Anything else for the record, Mr. Fedoruk?
No, Your Honor.
Mr. O'Farrell?
No, Your Honor.
We will stand in recess until 9 a.m. tomorrow. Mr. Fedoruk, how many more witnesses do you intend to call?
Six witnesses, Your Honor.
And that will conclude your case in chief, Mr. Fedoruk?
That's correct.
All right, Mr. O'Farrell, at this point in time, do you intend to call any witnesses? I know you have your expert scheduled to testify on Monday. Tomorrow will be Thursday. The prosecutor will be resting apparently, or I would assume. Do you intend to call any witnesses prior to your expert on Monday? We have all day Friday. That's why I'm asking.
I would prefer not to, Judge, if we could take Friday off. I'm sure I can conclude everything on Monday. And I still need to evaluate the prosecutor's case about whether I'm going to call witnesses other than my expert.
So you want to take a day off?
I do. And that's the best reason I can think of.
All right. We will see what we do tomorrow, and then we'll still be prepared Friday if we have to. And Mr. O'Farrell will give you a chance to think about if you want to call witnesses or not.
Thank you.
Anything else, gentlemen?
No, Your Honor.
No, Your Honor.
We'll stand in recess at this time.